Hello and welcome to the Teledyne ISCO Chromatography Lab. In this video, we'll go over the proper method for conducting thin layer chromatography, or TLC. TLC is a technique commonly used in student experiments as an introduction to preparative chromatography. Scientists can also use TLC to identify compounds and detect colors in things like food items or cosmetics. Despite its popularity, TLC is often conducted incorrectly, which reduces both consistency and efficiency. We're here to explain the correct method for thin layer chromatography and provide a demonstration for you to follow along with at home. First, let's go over the materials you will need. To conduct TLC, you will need a developing chamber and a lid. You will also need a stationary phase and a mobile phase. Here, the stationary phase is a glass plate coated with a thin layer of silica gel. The mobile phase is a solvent. In our example, the solvent will be a 20 milliliter mixture of hexane and ethyl acetate. One of the most common mistakes made when performing TLC is not allowing the solvent to equilibrate with the atmosphere inside the developing chamber. To correctly saturate the developing chamber, add a paper towel or filter paper to the chamber. Pouring your solvent over the paper helps facilitate equilibration. If you are using a beaker, make sure to cover the top with aluminum foil, as a typical watch glass allows some vapor to escape. Next, you will need the compound to be used in conducting the TLC. We will be using a simple dye for this instruction. To prepare your stationary phase, you will need a capillary to place your compound. You will also need a pencil and a straight edge to mark the stationary phase. In all, you will need the developing chamber with a lid, a paper product such as a paper towel or filter paper, a solvent, a glass plate coated with silica gel, a compound, a capillary, a pencil, and a straight edge. Let's begin the demonstration. Prepare your developing chamber by placing the paper inside. Tip the developing chamber back at an angle toward yourself and pour the solvent over the paper. Then, immediately place the lid on top of the developing chamber. To facilitate saturation, lift the developing chamber while securing the lid on top. Shake the developing chamber up and down until the paper is completely wet. Place the developing chamber back down and allow time for equilibration. You can briefly remove the lid to release pressure, but make sure to quickly cover the chamber afterwards. Equilibration should take about 3 to 5 minutes, or roughly the time it takes to prepare the TLC plate. So, while the solvent saturates inside the developing chamber, take your pencil, your straight edge, and your glass plate. Mark a line on the glass plate using the straight edge and pencil so that the line sits just above the solvent level inside the developing chamber. Be careful not to press too hard with your pencil or you run the risk of ruining the plate. Again, make sure the line is above the solvent level when you place your glass plate into the developing chamber. The next step is to spot your compound or dye on the glass plate. In the center of the straight line you just marked, use the pencil to make a point. This is where we will be placing our dye. Take your capillary and place it carefully in your compound so you pick up just a small amount. Find the point you just marked on the glass plate and dot your compound onto the point using the capillary. Once you have completely prepared your glass plate for TLC, the solvent should have had enough time to saturate the developing chamber. Next, we will remove the lid, place our glass plate in the solvent, and close the lid, making sure one more time to fully seal off the developing chamber. The only remaining step is to wait. If you follow the proper TLC method, in just 7 minutes, the solvent will climb all the way up the glass plate, and you will be able to analyze your compound. But remember, it may take longer if the developing chamber was not correctly equilibrated. Now that the TLC is complete, we will remove the glass plate from the developing chamber. With the pencil, we will mark the solvent front. The solvent front represents how far the solvent traveled up the glass plate, starting from where we placed our compound. You can find the solvent front by noticing where the silica gel transitions into a darker color here at the top. We can then measure the distance of the solvent front by measuring the distance between our original center point and our new marking. We should also measure the distance our sample traveled up the glass plate by measuring the distance from our original center point to the center of the dye's highest spot here. Write down these distances after you have measured them because they will be useful in calculating the retention factor of your compound. The retention factor can be found using the following equation. Retention factor, or RF, equals the distance traveled by the sample divided by the distance traveled by the solvent front. Once you have the retention factor, you have completed your TLC experiment. Thank you for joining us for our thin layer chromatography demonstration. We hope you now feel confident using the correct methods and correct materials to conduct TLC. Thanks for watching.